Well, welcome back. I think most of you are back. There might be a new person or two, but he was a teacher of mine. I've got to show him a little bit of respect. Well, I want to begin with a prayer tonight. Pope Francis, his recent encyclical, Fratelli Tutti, which I'll be referring to a little bit in the talk, at the end of the document, the encyclical, he has two prayers. A prayer to the Creator, I'll do at the beginning, and then at the end, an ecumenical Christian prayer, because the encyclical is not just written to Catholic people, but to all Christians and to all people of goodwill, really. So he's got these two prayers. So, in the name of the Father, and the Son, and the Holy Spirit. Lord, Father of our human family, you created all human beings equal in dignity. Pour forth into our hearts a fraternal spirit, and inspire in us a dream of renewed encounter, dialogue, justice, and peace. Move us to create healthier societies and a more dignified world, a world without hunger, poverty, violence, and war. May our hearts be open to all the peoples and nations of the earth. May we recognize the goodness and beauty that you have sown in each of us, and thus forge bonds of unity, common projects, and shared dreams. Amen. Well, on the first night, I just tried to highlight some Franciscan traits, especially as I see them in Franciscan parishes. That's us. On the second night, I tried to take a Franciscan view of Lent, maybe not in the broad Franciscan view, but one friar's view of some aspects of Lent. And the overall theme of these 3 nights was a Franciscan view of Lent and life. So we kind of need to look at the second part of that, the life part, the broader world, the broader life that we share. But I'll bring it into our parish life, and more about our personal encounters too along the way. So we're going to begin with this reading, and I think Jan's going to read this for us. Thomas of Chilano was one of the, probably the first biographer of St. Francis. So the fact that he was one of the earliest biographers probably makes him one of the most exact, closer to the time of Francis himself compared to some later writings. But
it's a rainbow.
It was a rainbow. I thought I heard it raining. Oh, we got a rainbow. That's very nice. Anybody wants to come up and see it? Oh, you can see it from back there, I guess. No, rainbows are good things. That's a good sign.
A reading from the first book of Thomas of Chilano's The Life of St. Francis. Francis would not rest from carrying out fervently the holy impulse of his spirit. Now in the 13th year of his conversion, he journeyed to the region of Syria, while bitter and long battles were being waged daily between Christians and pagans. Taking a companion with him, he was not afraid to present himself to the sight of the Sultan of the Saracens. Who is equal to the task of telling this story? What great firmness he showed standing in front of him. With great strength of soul, he spoke to him. With eloquence and confidence, he answered those who insulted the Christian law. Before he reached the Sultan, he was captured by soldiers, insulted and beaten, but was not afraid. Although he was ill-treated by many with a hostile spirit and a harsh attitude, he was received graciously by the Sultan. The Sultan honored him as much as he could, offering him many gifts, trying to turn his mind to worldly riches. But when he saw that he resolutely scorned all these things as dung, the Sultan was overflowing with admiration and recognized him as a man unlike any other. He was moved by his words and listened to him very willingly. In all this, however, the Lord did not fulfill his desire, reserving for him the prerogative of a unique grace.
I hope Francis's view of life is going to help each of us today, tomorrow, and in the years to come, really, in our personal relationships, our relationships as parishes, but also in all the challenging encounters that probably await us. We don't yet know what all those will be. Certainly, Francis going before the Sultan was a particularly important encounter. But long before Francis ventured into that camp of the Sultan, he had many encounters that kept widening the lens of his heart. I think one encounter, one of the early encounters for Francis, was suffering and sickness itself as a result of war. The imprisonment, the dungeon-like captivity for almost a year in the elements without proper food. His health deteriorated, of course, in a year like that. And part of the sadness had to be his dreams of knighthood, his dreams of glory, of doing something great, were all dashed and broken by the fact that he had been captured in that war between the two cities. But somewhere, following that very trying year, somewhere along the line there, he was encountering Jesus, and perhaps especially Jesus in his suffering. A second encounter that I think was, and most of us know the story to some degree, of Francis and the leper. So shortly into his conversion life, like almost every person in the world, Francis abhorred lepers. The disfiguring that happens because of all the skin tears and such that happens in a person who has leprosy, probably the scent that goes with that sort of rotting of flesh, and certainly the fear of coming close to someone with leprosy for fear that I will be contracting that disease. So Francis was not alone in being afraid of lepers. and wanting really nothing to do with them. And yet again, something happened that one day when his natural instinct was to fly, to leave, to go around, get away. But something moved in his heart. Instead of ignoring or walking away from that leper, he not only decided to give him alms, which he was seeking, but he was moved to embrace the leper. And some of the texts say to kiss the leper. And then in some way he knew he had embraced Christ when he did that. I was impressed a few years ago when the students at the Newman Center formed a band for the nights that they would be doing adoration or whatever. And they named themselves Kiss the Leper. It's like, by George, they heard it. They caught the flavor of that. To name your little band Kiss the Leper Band. People who did not know the story of St. Francis had to wonder what that was about. But I thought, that story obviously touched them to some degree, that they would choose that as their name of their little band. Some of those personal encounters with people that we find difficult can be great moments. And if not great moments, at least significant. Some days, a couple weeks ago, I was out alongside the church down at St. Francis Seraph, where a lot of people who are street people who are without homes, are hanging around waiting for dinner next door or whatever. And one of the guys saw that I was wearing the Tau cross around my neck. I wasn't wearing my habit at that time, so I was wearing the Tau cross. And he looked at it and he said, "Oh man, do you have another one of those?" I said, "No, I don't." He said, but I said I could certainly try to find one, get one for you. And he's told me his name was Kunta Kinte. Could be. You never know what. He was probably young enough that he would have been born when Roots was a big thing on TV. That may be his given name, Kunta Kinte. I walked away to go about what I needed to do. But within the hour, I was thinking, why didn't I just give that to him? Why? I could get another one, So when I left the church a few hours later, blessedly, he was outside the door still. I said, "Kunta." Yeah, so I remembered his name. I said, "Here, take this." "Oh man, you're going to make me cry." He had, and then he told me that I think his grandmother had given him one like that a long time ago. And when he got evicted from his apartment, he remembered to take his Bible with him. But somehow that little cross didn't get to go with him. He lost it. And he wanted that. It was just one of those moments when it's a small encounter, but at least we were looking into each other's eyes. And there was he was respecting me, I'm respecting him. It was just a good moment. And I was thankful to God that he was still there when I came out the second time, because I knew I would have felt bad for a long time that I hadn't given him that cross. Anyway, just one of those encounters, and we have many of them, I'm sure, that kind of broadens our perspective. I think a third element of Francis and is his insight or inspiration to see each creature of God as a brother or sister. every human being he met is a brother or sister. And not just limited to we human beings. It was the birds in the sky itself, the sun and the moon, the water, the rocks, the worms, the wolf at Gubbio. It was all brother and sister. He knew he was in a relationship with everything that God had created. And the more we realize that it's all sisters and brothers to us, it will gradually change our perspective on how we treat the water, the neighbor's dog, who often we treat better than the neighbor. People love those dogs, and we love them. I must admit, sometimes when I'm walking and I see somebody walking a dog, oh, is he or she friendly? So I get to pet the dog. I pay more attention to the dog than I do the person on the other end of the leash. There's something about the dog. But it's all sisters and brothers. We're connected to each other in all these things. So long before Francis had this impulse to encounter the Sultan in Egypt, he had these other encounters. And so the author says in the 13th year of his conversion, he had this holy impulse in his spirit to travel to Egypt. Here's a man who had spent, as far as I know, all of his adult life in that small area, not real small, but in Italy. You know, that's where he was. I think he may have gone to France as a young man with his father for merchant purchases or something. But most of his life was in Italy, within a small radius. To me, it's like, what an impulse to decide, I'm going to go to Egypt. I'm going to go to Egypt and talk to the Sultan. I mean, it'd be like me saying, I'm going to go to Russia, I'm going to talk to Putin. I wonder how that would work. In some ways, that would be a good thing for me to do if it would work. But he just up and goes with one companion because he was recognizing the Sultan as his brother. Now, remember, Christians are at war with the Muslims. He's walking into a war zone, unarmed, armed only with his faith. And despite the objections of the war leaders of the Christians, he wanted badly to go. And the fact that he got soldiers captured him, and the author says he suffered and was beaten, but he's still not afraid. He wanted to go to convert the Sultan. I mean, that's really what his achievement would have been, to convert him to Christian life. But he went in such a respectful way that even though that didn't happen, Francis left from that encounter also changed with a deeper respect for that Sultan and those who worship Allah. And even, some authors will say, even his prayer style took on some of the style of things that he heard when he was, during that period of time, he was with the Sultan. So Francis's life was changed by encounters, whether it's the leper, whether it's suffering, whether it's all these other brothers and sisters. He was being changed by those encounters. And encountering God, encountering Jesus in the midst of all of that. Life for Francis had to have interconnections. He was also helpful in bringing about peace between the bishop and the mayor of Assisi. Yes, sometimes the bishop and the mayor would not get along. But he had a magic way almost of helping them dialogue and come together. And of course the wonderful story of the wolf and the people of Gubbio, which probably is more fable than fact, but it's still a great story. That this wolf was ravaging the town, and Francis was able to come to some kind of a pact between the wolf and the town so that they could live together. I think because Francis was so ability to bring things together, whether that story's true or not, those are the kind of stories that would flow. That's the kind of thing you would expect St. Francis to be able to do. So, we people of St. Clement and St. Francis Seraph, obviously called to see each other as brothers and sisters. I'm not saying that we don't do that. I'm sure we do. But we're called to see that relationship and that reality all the more deeply now. We would be like two families that just haven't seen each other in a long time. Two families that don't really know each other, but we're brothers and sisters. Well, now we're going to get to know each other a little more somehow over the coming years. But sometimes even within the lines of our own parish, there are challenges to try to embrace differences. At St. Francis Seraph, the regular parishioners, there's some struggle going on. How do we include homeless people in the church, especially for Sunday Mass? People who aren't there to worship with us, people who are there because all week long they can come in and keep warm and rest. So on Sundays, that's pretty much what they're there for. And there's a struggle, a little bit of a struggle. How does that affect our worship? And how much do we want them to be part of things? So that, even within the parish, there's something that we need to be working on. And I know here at St. Clement, the influx of the Spanish-speaking members has stretched you, the traditional German St. Bernard people. That's had to be something of a stretch to suddenly be a parish that's filled with a lot of Spanish-speaking people. And that's good that it stretches us, that it helps us to see one another and to respect one another. So those are just kind of examples that we already know that sometimes it's a struggle. Each parish has its culture. That's for sure. We each have our own worship space, and they look different. We probably have different styles of liturgy on Sunday, maybe different style of music. We use a different hymnals, down to little nitty-gritty things that were different. And some of those things we really value and treasure. This is who we are. This is how we do it at St. Francis Seraph. And that's been a struggle too during COVID, because how some things were done at St. Francis Seraph prior to COVID aren't happening now. And people are waiting we can get back to how it is, how it's supposed to be at St. Francis. So we have a variety of priorities. We probably have a variety of conservative and liberal views about different things. But we're trying desperately, or we want very much, to make sure we keep including everybody. I must say the other night I was impressed that I was invited to help work the festival here. Now that's being included. And I don't like festivals, so I'm not sure I'm going to accept the invitation. But just as somebody would say, well, you're part of the family now, so get to work. Come work the festival. Francis wanted us to be connected, brothers and sisters all. And Pope Francis, when he wrote his encyclical in 2020, he starts with the words Fratelli Tutti, brothers all. It's from one of the admonitions of St. Francis, the opening words of the admonition. Interestingly, Pope Francis's encyclical prior to that about the environment, Laudato Si, is also the words right out of Francis' mouth in the Canticle of the Creatures. This Jesuit pope loves to quote Francis of Assisi in all of his writings and encyclicals. And in that encyclical, he's talking about the culture of encounter, social friendship. Now he's talking across the board, across the world. People have got to learn to be able to encounter one another in a socially friendly way. He even says we need to rediscover that we need one another. Sometimes in our American culture, we can be so independent, we can be individualist to a great extent. We sometimes forget we need one another. He thinks we need to rediscover that. Individualism is a really insidious, almost a cancer. And he points out nationalism is that. Not patriotism, but nationalism. And I would say he doesn't talk about it, but even parochialism can be a big problem. We're so parochial. Don't touch my parish. Don't touch my church. And that's what's making us all nervous about Beacons of Light. Because almost all the churches are getting touched by this. And we've been taught to love our parish, go to your parish, and now we're being said, no, it's not just about a parish. You're part of a larger church. But that's not been our experience, so it's going to be hard to make that adjustment. Further into the document, he says, we're saved together or no one is saved. We're saved together or no one is saved. We really depend and need each other. And in that Laudato Si, he talks about this common home. We share this planet with each other and with all life forms, and how we need to appreciate that, respect that. So Pope Francis, he really does grasp the attraction and the power that the life and the words of St. Francis, I think, offer us. Francis's view of the world. And certainly in our parishes here at St. Clement and at St. Francis Seraph, and in the parishes that the friars and the sisters were part of for many years, people absorbed some of that Franciscan view of things and have come to love it. So we should be well equipped to enter into this kind of engagement over the next few years, because we do share such common values. I feel sorry, or I think it's going to be more of a struggle for some of the other families in the Archdiocese where you've got 4 or 5 parishes coming together as one with such different cultures. We have the great advantage that we are all coming into this with our Franciscan viewpoint. I think that's not that it's not going to be hard sometimes, but we share so much in common, even if we don't know it yet, because we have this groundwork in being among Franciscans. So I think, this family of our 2 parishes, however it will be looking 5 years from now, but I want to go into it with the hope that we can be a vibrant Franciscan presence in the Archdiocese of Cincinnati, that people will catch the glow, that we really will be a beacon of light. Because of our Franciscan charism, the gifts that all that means. So moving forward into encounter, as Francis talks about it, Pope Francis, and then as Saint Francis experienced it in his life, gives me a lot of hope. Again, I'd like to have you do some discussing with each other for maybe the next 15 minutes or so. I wrote down 3 questions, but I know you'll talk about what you want to talk about anyway. But maybe something to get you started at least. You might share, let me give you a couple minutes of quiet before we do that. So what encounters in your life have impacted your own faith journey? Whether it's an encounter with someone or encountering kind of a life-changing situation. What kind of encounters have helped shape your life's journey? A second question might be, have you had encounters or an encounter that maybe you helped impart faith to another person? That you sparked something new in terms of faith coming alive in someone else. Maybe a less easy to answer question, but how can you encounter Christ more in the last few weeks of Lent? Is there anything that you might not want to share that? I don't know, but so basically encounter what have you encountered that really has fed your faith life? Have you had an opportunity to encounter another that helped change your life? I must say, giving that little cross to Kunta, it may not have changed him at all, but it changed me a little bit. It made a change in me. Simple as that was. My hope would be that it might mean something to him, but we could never have any control over that. And then after these 3 nights, if there's anything different we might want to try to encounter as we move through the last 3 weeks of Lent. So let me just give you a couple minutes just of quiet. I'm an introvert, and I don't like to go immediately into a discussion if I haven't had time to think about it. Your encounters that fed your faith life, that maybe you fed the life of another. Anything going forward the rest of Lent. If you've been sitting next to the same people all 3 nights, you might want to risk encountering somebody different by even moving around a little bit. But whatever you're comfortable with. So, take about 15 minutes and try to share a little bit about those encounters. One minute warning. 1 minute warning. Come on. 51. Okay, folks, let me interrupt you for see if there's any overall comments or something that someone would like to share. Just remember we have a little reception afterwards, and at 8:30 there's kids coming in for a time of confession, which doesn't mean we have to be out of here, but one of the things about Catholic liturgy is that it's always a monologue of the priest. So I think it's so helpful that in 3 evenings like this, there's an opportunity for you to share some faith, and we don't get that opportunity at Mass. You're listening, to prayers, preaching, you sing, but a time that you can actually contribute something of your own faith life. So that's why I value what you're doing here these hours. So if there's anyone want to share something that you shared in the small group or overall kind of comment, I'm sure we'd all be happy to hear it. Yes.
We were discussing our encounters with Latinos and how they're strong here at this parish. Some of us have traveled to Latin America, and we've seen Latin American spirituality and how that encounter has strengthened us and how much we've learned about faith, and sharing that with our brothers and sisters from another place. It really has it's enlarged our hearts, it's strengthened our faith, it's brought us closer to God and to one another.
Perfect example of encounter.
I work in healthcare, and I have the opportunity to be with those in a nursing home world, and so part of our mission had always been to make sure that it was a Catholic organization, and to be more Christ-like to those that we serve. So my faith was definitely enhanced by working with those, and it's also, I've had the pleasure of actually being with folks as they actually have passed. So sitting with them, being with them, praying with them is truly an experience and something I will never forget, and it was always an honor to be with them as they made their way on to heaven.
Yeah, I forgot to mention that when Francis was seeing everything as sister and brother, death itself was sister death, to be embraced and loved, not to be feared. So even death was a sister to him. And I think you've probably seen people who die really peaceful and want that, and maybe some other deaths are a real struggle. But I hope when that day comes for me, I'm ready for sister death. I never had any sisters in life, so I'm really ready for something other than my brother anyway. But that's a whole nother story. Well, thank you. Oh, yeah, Dan?
I didn't share this with the group, but it was an awakening for me. It was right in the middle of the change with St. Monica, St. George, and the seeming battle between pre-Vatican II and post-Vatican II. And we go to Myrtle Beach every year. And I noticed something that was probably always there, but I'd never noticed before. And that was that the parish there, when I heard the preaching and the spirit of the parish, it wasn't on the continuum. It was part of its own culture. And I recognized the culture because it was more fundamentalist, the personal relationship with Jesus that it's hard to explain if you have not been among fundamentalists, but to see that the church was soaked in its own culture there. It was just as Catholic as anyone else, but it was soaked. And the thing is, it showed me that sometimes it's not a matter of black or white or even shades of gray. There's green, yellow, fuchsia. And that the church, it's not an either or, but that there's a bigger world out there.
Thank you, because we all need that reminder sometimes that the campus minister I worked with for many years used to talk, because he had heard this from one of his professors in theology. It's like there's a left side of the table and a right side of the table, and they're all at the table. Kind of the picture of the Last Supper. It's like somebody has to be down on the far end and somebody has to be down on the far end, but they're all at the table. And somebody at that end of the table might wish that guy would go away, but they're not going to go away. It's like they're part of the banquet too. So, well, thank you, those of you especially who have hung in here for all 3 nights. Oh, not finished.
Thank you. One of the things that impresses me every year is Easter Vigil. People study throughout the year, probably starting, October, September, and then it comes to fruition at Easter Vigil where they're baptized or confirmed or brought into the church. And Jan and I have had the privilege of working with a few people through that process over at St. Monica, St. George. But the happiness that people have at the Easter Vigil when they're going through the rites of baptism and so forth is just very inspiring. And actually teaching those people, or not just teaching, but just working with them is a gift as well. And here last year, I think we had 10 or 11 people baptized. They were all Spanish-speaking people, but they were so enthused. And I hope we go to Easter Vigil every year because it just lifts us up. So I can't recommend it more.
Yeah, well, thank you. I'm a little jealous of St. Clement Parish because you do have people in your RCIA moving to the Easter sacraments, and we don't have anybody at St. Francis this year. So it makes the Easter Vigil kind of dull. It's just not the same without seeing the light in some people's eyes that have waited for this. That is a beautiful encounter moment. 25 years ago, I was asked to do a parish mission at St. Francis of Assisi in Muncie, Indiana. And it was also the Newman Center for Ball State University. So I had just begun to put my toe in the water of doing campus ministry. I was provincial vicar at the time. So I agreed to do a parish mission there. And I was great on Sunday, the masses. You know, that I'm so good at. But, oh my goodness, the next 3 nights, every day was a panic. Do I have enough to say? Do I have something worthwhile to say? And it was like, and at the end of it, it's just like, that did not feel very good. But I told myself if another parish in that part of Indiana would hear about the mission and give me a call, that would be a nice affirmation. I'm still waiting for a call from a parish in Indiana. So I appreciate your patience. This was a sort of a trimmed down mission compared to what that was supposed to be. But I'm not in my element when I'm doing stuff like this, so I appreciate your patience and your kindness and receptivity. So we'll close with another prayer of Pope Francis, that ecumenical Christian prayer. O God, Trinity of love, from the profound communion of your divine life, pour out upon us a torrent of fraternal love. Grant us the love reflected in the actions of Jesus, in his family of Nazareth, and in the early Christian community. Grant that we Christians may live the gospel, discovering the Christ in every human being, recognizing him crucified in the sufferings of the abandoned and forgotten of our world, and risen in each brother and sister who makes a new start. Come, Holy Spirit, show us your beauty, reflected in all the peoples of the earth, so that we may discover anew that all are important and all are necessary different faces of the one humanity that God so loves. Amen. Amen.
On behalf of the whole parish of St. Clement and everyone here, I want to thank Father Al for accepting our invitation. Accepting our invitation of guiding us along on this time of mission. And we talked about how lives are in adjustment right now with Beacons of Light, and personally, and for the friars here, we're further in this whole process of uniting the whole country into one province, and we don't know what that will be, short or long term, so that's sort of part of the whole Franciscan story going on right now. And but it was good that you were able to help us think about, pray about, assimilate with time some of these Franciscan values that express the overall vision of Francis and Clare and all those early followers of the Franciscan way. And I'm glad that St. Clement folks could be here, and St. Francis Seraph folks could be here, and Bellarmine people could be here, and all kinds of people. And thanks for your participation. Glad to have had you. Now, right now, there's opportunity for social. Our social people are back there, ready to help us be social with each other, and. Yeah, and at 8:30, I told you last night, I think, that a bunch of kids are coming over. I think a bunch of them will, and looking for confession. And you are welcome to come to confession too, if you'd like. This might be an opportune time for you. It might be the only time you can do it this Lent. But you can socialize a little bit before the kids get here. There's going to be 4 of us friar priests ministering reconciliation. Father Tom Spire, since he's over in that neighborhood, is going to be at this spot right here. Tom, it's only 1 step up to there, so you'll be great. And because this is at the most steps up, I'm going to take that spot right behind the altar. There's 2 chairs back there where I'm going to be. And then Father Fred and Father Frank can decide who wants which little house back here to be in. And for those of you who want to go to confession right now before you go home, I'm going up there right now. I'm not going to socialize with you for that reason. But you other guys, socialize as much as you want before you come start hearing confessions. And we'll be good. Yes? Okay, Father Fred's going to start as well back there in that little house. All right, thanks for coming. Have a safe trip home, and we'll see you next time.
I got a phone call.